Hello there. As you may have noticed, this video took, well, a long time. But don't worry, the next video will be way sooner, so don't expect another long wait. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and remember to like and subscribe. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, or as I will be calling it throughout this video, Scary Stories, is a book series written by Alvin Schwartz, born in New York and father of 4, and author of 50 books, all dealing with folklore and the such. His Scary Stories series was a really big hit, and today they have sold over 7 million copies. The first book has 29 stories, and it was released in 1981. My personal favorite story would have to be the Hearse song,
which goes something like this. Don't you ever laugh as the hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. They wrap you up in a big white sheet, from your head down to your tiny feet. They put you in a big black box and cover you up with dirt and rocks. All goes well for about a week, then your coffin begins to leak. The worms crawl in and the worms crawl out. The worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes and they eat your nose. They eat the jelly between your toes. A big green worm with rolling eyes crawls in your stomach and out your eyes. Your stomach turns a slimy green, and pus pours out like whipping cream. You spread it on a slice of bread, and that's when you eat when you are dead. You spread it on a slice of bread, and that's what you eat when you are dead.
I just really like how it breaks the format and also describes something very real. It's a novel idea, and death is a real fear that kids have, so the combo of all those factors really meshes well in my opinion. However, the worst would probably have to be the girl who stood on a grave. The story has a decent setup, but the end is just bad. She died of fright after accidentally stabbing her dress into the ground. It's just illogical and a boring ending, but I digress. Scary Stories has a few fan-favorite stories/monsters. However, due to the nature of them being a compilation of short stories, I can't really go much into detail about any of them. The most popular ones would be The Pale Lady and Harold the Scarecrow. These two play a big part in the movie, and have a really creepy artwork associated with them in the books, so that's why I assume they are the most known. Speaking of artwork, I love the illustrations by Stephen Gamel. These are really good and off-putting. Here are some of my favorites. Something I should mention before moving on is Scary Stories did have a movie made in 2019. The basic premise is that a ragtag group of teens go trick-or-treating, and after some hijinks they go to a haunted house where they find a book, and the main character Stella summons a demon that begins to write scary stories in the book. This leads to a lot of good scenes with the monsters from the books. The movie ends with the main character writing the story of the ghost to resolve its unfinished business. Overall, I think this movie is fine, but it leaves a lot to be desired. The sections without the original book monsters are pretty dull and boring. However, the designs of the monsters are really good. You can really see all the effort and care put into them, especially in the behind-the-scenes commentary the crew did. My favorite scene would have to be the one where Harold the Scarecrow infects this kid and turns him into a scarecrow. The cinematography in this scene is great. I love how it makes the cornfield feel endless, but the magnum opus comes when Harold stabs the kid with a pitchfork, and you hear the boy choking and gagging on straw that you can hear growing and expanding from inside him. You can even hear some of his bones crack as a result of the growing. During this scene, the kid emerges from the cornfield. The camera keeps him on the left side during this, and leaves a lot of open space on the right. I assume the intent of this was to enhance the feeling of the kid being alone. The camera also gets wobbly as the kid wobbles around on the ground. It's a really good scene, and I recommend you check it out. I think the movie is pretty good, but I would hardly recommend it to anybody else who isn't a teenager. While Scary Stories may have given a few children goosebumps, there's another book series well known for goosebumps. Of course, that series I'm talking about is obviously Goosebumps. While starting out as a book series, it has really spread out over the years, and it's still making things even today. Just last year, there was a new television series Not to mention the newest book was released in August 5th of this year. However, when it comes to Goosebumps, there's just way too many books for me to read for this video. The ones I have read in the past were pretty good. There are a lot of cool concepts in the series, like Horrorland, which had 2 video games based off of it. However, something I do want to talk about is the cover of Goosebumps books, drawn by Tim Jacobs. They are really detailed, and they have a real nostalgic 90s vibe. Some of my favorites are Stay Out of the Basement, which shows a leafy hand coming out of, well, said basement. What I think is an eye is also peering at the viewer, but that might just be some grain or something, I'm not sure. Another I enjoy is the Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. The dude on the cover looks pretty unsettling, especially to a younger audience. I think it has something to do with his eyes and teeth and his porcelain-like face. One last one that I like is the Haunted School. The eyes peering from the abyss of the locker, I really like the design. It feels very dynamic, and the ghosts themselves look perfectly empty. I really enjoy how one of the books has Tim Jacobs' name on it. However, the random skeleton picture kinda removes from it, but, beggars can't be choosers. Something I find really interesting about R.L. Stine is his work schedule. In an interview on the PBS website, he says that he writes to 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., or 2,000 words. His work schedule actually sounds pretty good, and at roughly 20,000 words per book, it only takes 10 days to finish a Goosebumps book. No wonder why there's so many of them. Moving on to the Goosebumps movies, and I find these movies mid. Other than the premise of the books containing the monster, that was a great base for the movie, but the plot is just, and honestly, the characters are pretty mid, I can't lie. However, the 1995 Goosebumps TV show, now I find that really good. Okay, now, granted, it's bad, but I think it's bad in a good way, or maybe that's just my nostalgia talking. My favorite episode in this series that I can remember would probably have to be the Chillology Part 1 Squeal of Fortune. I remember this episode sticking with me for years. The general plot of this episode is that a girl gets put into like a model town and meets Carl, the creepy dude who runs the town, and he gives the girl control of his lemonade stand on a hot day.
I'm not selling lemonade.
Carlsbad has many opportunities. We'll start small, see how you do, and grow from there. Besides, this isn't just any lemonade.
You got invaded the shade with Carl's lemonade.
It's my own special blend.
But tells the girl not to raise the price of lemonade, but since the girl is greedy, she raises the price. And people just can't stop buying the lemonade, and she makes it more and more expensive. And then she pours out the lemonade into like this hidden pitcher, and lies, saying there's only one glass left, and then holds an auction. But of course, she gets found out, and then she actually turns into a pig. She grabs the money and starts running, and the people try to capture and eat her. But she makes it out after sacrificing the money and learns her lesson. The ending where the girl turns into a pig gave me nightmares for a while. The mask they use for the girl at the end is just nasty. The way the skin overlaps and the few hairs on the thing just makes it look unsettling, especially for a young man. However, I also really like the message of this episode. Overpricing goods to make more money is a scummy thing to do, and it's a good lesson to teach kids. Not to mention the message that if someone rips you off, you should rise up against them. Something I want to mention before I end this section is that in 1999, Scholastic sued R.L. Stine for using ghostwriters, and that's part of the reason I didn't really bother to discuss the quality of the books themselves. Goosebumps as a franchise is large and expansive, and I could really go on and on about different stories, shows, games, merchandise, and even R.L. Stine himself. But I need to move on to the next topic. But let me know if you want a video of me going in depth about Goosebumps media. Oh yeah, I need a transition. Coraline is a book written by Neil Gaiman about a girl who goes to another world controlled by the Beldam. And everything is nice and fun until the Beldam says that if she wants to stay, she has to sew buttons into her eyes. And she gets scared and runs back home, but her parents are no longer there, so she has to go back and save them with help from a cat. She challenges the Beldam to a game in which she has to find the kids and her parents' soul in order to escape. She finds the kid's soul, and then smartly tricks the Beldam into opening the passage between worlds, and then jukes her and leaves. However, the Beldam's hand is now in the real world, and it's trying to steal the key to the crawl space. But Coraline is able to trap it down a well, and live happily ever after. I think Coraline is a great example of children's horror. since it is scary to a child, and yet it has a good message to teach them. Don't take your life for granted and be brave, and don't fall for people who try to manipulate you. I love the design and concept of the book. The art of the beldam is great, and it gives me the feeling of like old folklore drawings. And in fact, Coraline is based off of an old story, The New Mother, by Lucy Clifford. It just adds to the feeling of that cozy folklore vibe that you hear as a child. The Coraline movie echoes these messages, but replaces that cozy folklore feeling with stop-motion animation. Stop-motion animation really works for this movie. You can feel the amount of love and care put into every frame. Not to mention the lighting in this movie is just beautiful. Here are some examples. In conclusion, I think books are very underrated in today's time. There are some bangers in there if you take the time to look for them, and the concept of children's horror really starts at them. However, the modern age, not many people read books, and I think that these movie adaptations really help keep the books like these alive and in the public eye. Make sure to subscribe and join me next time when I talk about something. I will make that Majora's Mask video one day, I promise.